Ivor, and I was talking to him over the last 8 months, and he helps coaches get funded. And something kind of clicked with me because I had a lot of potential customers and other coaches that needed help, but they couldn't afford any of the services, and they also need help on operating costs. And the two categories of coaches and consultants, and of course solopreneurs that needed help, they need help because they're just getting started or they're in kind of in a growth phase. So I want to thank Michael for actually showing up today, being a guest speaker. And I want to ask you, Michael, could you tell us a little bit about yourself so the
Sure,
audience will kind of get to know you better?
sure. Hi, nice to see you, Troy. Um, yes, Michael Praver. I own Business Coach Funding. We do funding for startups and small businesses, and we've been doing that for 13 and a half years. Um, it really came out of the 2008 crash. I owned
Hmm.
nearly 300 mortgages, 296 mortgages before the crash. So it was a very bad time for me. And I was getting a lot of calls for things like gourmet food trucks. And I realized if I can figure out how to fund startups, and we do much
Hmm.
more than startups now, but a
Hmm.
lot of people start at the startup level. Um, if we can help people with startup funding and education, we'll never run out of clients, ever, ever. There's just so many people trying to start businesses, most of them undercapitalized. And
Hmm.
if they don't have the guidance and they don't have enough money, they're just going to go out of business. Even if their idea is good, it doesn't have time to catch on.
Yeah, there's a lot of operational costs that people don't realize until they get into it. Being a professional coach is very lucrative, a consultant. However, you have to have marketing dollars. You have to have money for equipment, potential health insurance, and things like that. To just those are just the basics.
Mhm.
What are the things that the people ended up paying for through some of your funding there? I'm thinking operational, but I'm
It,
not.
it runs the gambit. When I work with coaches, we made a name that was kind of amorphous. It could be anything. So some of the
Mhm,
coaches come to us for funding themselves, even
mhm.
though the real idea of this was to fund the clients of the coaches. So
Yeah.
coaches are businesses and their clients are businesses. Now, when we deal with coaches, it's for every reason you can think of. Some people wanted to move into a physical office. Some people wanted to hire people under them, obviously
Mhm,
marketing and expenses.
mhm,
But since we can help coaches with funding, some of the coaches that were only doing, let's call it regular coaching,
mhm,
it might be a 3 pack or a 5 pack, have started doing the 5,000, the 10,000, and the $20,000 mastermind group because they realize that they can, if they introduce the clients to us and we help the clients with funding, we're not funding the 10 or $20,000 mastermind. We're funding the clients, whatever we can get them. But if I
mhm,
can get your client 100 or $200,000,
mhm.
then signing up for your $5 or $10,000 mastermind becomes no big deal for the
Right.
borrower. So I've helped a lot of coaches come up with strategies to have bigger, more expensive products that they never even thought that they were going to have.
So what's the chances of if they get funding and so a coach sends you their potential client to get funded? What are the chances of the coach getting funded for that actual offer? Is it like a 90% or?
No, because we don't know the quality of the borrowers, and so there's no way I can answer. I have
Oh, no, no, no.
borrowers.
My question was really for if they were have X amount of funding to go to the actual coach that sent you the client so they can get paid. What is the
Oh,
chance of them saying, "Oh, I'm gonna use this money for you, Mr. Coach," versus some other entity?
it's over 95%. I mean, why would
Wow.
you? Well, think about it. First of all, a lot of the coaches are starting to understand, because we talk about this all the time. Look, I'm thrilled to help them because they're a business. A
Yeah.
coach is a business like any other, and I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to help their clients. Okay. But their clients and themselves are the easy ones. What I try and convince coaches to do is bring us their prospects, those people that are
Hmm.
never going to sign up because they're afraid, either they don't have the money or they're afraid to spend the money.
Hmm.
And if they
Hmm.
look, we're not going to be able to fund everybody, but if you bring me two or three people that you could talk to till you're blue in the face and they're never going to sign up, but they're probably not going to tell you it's an issue of money, but it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But if you bring them to us, I mean, it might not be the first one that's fundable. It might be the second or third. It might not be
Right.
every client.
But if you think about the math, if you're talking to, say, I don't know, 20 people a week, say you're a coach, you're talking to 20 people a week, right?
Mhm.
And out of 20 people, you figure out seven are actually a good fit, right? And then out of that seven, you find that seven can't afford your services, which is actually pretty common. Most people can't afford the typical person can't afford normal services in order to get where they need to go. Um,
Agreed.
and so they hand you those seven people, and if you are able to fund one of them, they have a new client that week. So if they think about it like that, it's a great deal. So even if I'm looking at low numbers now, okay, so I don't
Mhm.
want to like step on your parade there, but I'm always worst case scenario. And if that's the worst case scenario, it's not a bad scenario at all. How long does it take? What's the lowest to the highest range of time it takes for you to fund someone?
That's a great question. Okay. Okay. People call us how to beat the bank. Our job is to help people understand how many types of funding they qualify for, what they qualify for, what the differences are, so they can choose if they qualify for two or three or four different types of funding. They can choose all four, they can choose one or two of them, because we're going to educate them. And we're
Mhm.
really big on that. We really want people to understand what we're doing and the implications, positive and negative. So they're making the most informed decisions. Again,
Right.
we're not in this for the short run. I mean, I'm doing
Well,
a
well, I mean, even if you can't help them with funding, say they owe money from a past thing, or their credit is shot because of the economy, whatever the case may be.
that
I
happens.
see there's a lot of life stuff happen, like people have death in the family and they have to take care of other things, and their credit gets trashed. And so I think we had a conversation before. You said, well, some people will do a package just to make sure that their credit gets stable, and
Yeah.
they're able to do it. So it's not a one size fits all. It's like you're there to actually help this person improve their life. So correct me if I'm wrong, or am
No,
I misspeaking?
you're exactly right. Everyone gets a free consultation, and that it doesn't matter if they don't qualify. And I know that from the first minute. They get their time. We'll tell them what to do. We'll guide them. It may be stuff that they're not going to follow through with, or it may not be
Mhm.
immediate. If somebody needs funding and they're not qualified, we ask if they have friends, family members, or business partners. Because if they do, what we do is we fund the other person, sometimes the spouse, and then we come back to that person afterwards.
Mm. And so,
Okay.
say someone needs to adjust their credit or something. You have smaller packages that can address some of those things, or do you hand them off to someone else, or do you tell them what to do? Because I know that most people are only very good at what they do, and they will
Mhm.
not do what you ask them to do.
Sure.
It's-
Okay. We have um, a deletion company. You could call it credit repair, but it's like the newfangled, much faster, more powerful version. So it could remove negatives, but also positives. Sometimes we're kind of manipulating the way we want the credit to look, and someone might have 20 credit cards and we want to remove 18 of them to make them look like they only have two, even
Oh,
though even though the 18 stay open and alive and everything, they don't show up on your credit anymore.
okay.
So, but we
So
don't
long
do that
story short, if
ourselves.
their credit is shot, you have the ability to get up to normal levels just for the whole livelihood, right? Because you can't do anything without credit. And I know that during COVID and stuff, some people had money coming in and some people didn't. And now people are feeling that pain because they're not saving as much. On average, the person was before COVID was saving something like 30%. And now people are saving an average of about 5%. It's a huge difference. So they may be cash strapped for whatever reason. I'll give you an example for this year. I had 5 people lined up in January. And January is typically a very heavy month in January to mid-February, because it's the beginning of the year. Everyone's trying to get things done and all that stuff, and everyone's just getting you up, waiting for you to get off a holiday and all that. And I only had 1 conversion. It's very unusual. I was expecting 3 out of 5, right?
Sure.
And so I asked around because I'm a coach, I'm a LinkedIn coach, business coach. And so I was asking around to other vendors of maybe different or ancillary or very similar. And they said, oh, they all hit the same, they're all hitting the same, seeing the same stuff. And so a lot of times people just need to figure out, how can I improve my life in order to, not be put in this hole, so to speak.
Sure. Look, every single scenario is different. We look at every single person. We do this one-on-one. It's private. They don't have to share it with their friends or their family. No one needs to know. But they have to tell us what's really going on. And
Right.
even though we have a deletion company that we use, we don't do it ourselves, but we use a third-party company.
Mhm.
That doesn't necessarily get you good credit. That removes bad. So,
Mm.
so like I've got one guy right now who came to me. He's probably got a $10 million a year business, but that has nothing to do with his credit.
Yeah.
And his credit was horrible, one of the worst I've ever seen. But when we looked at it carefully, even though he had charge-offs and late payments and everything, he had 2 perfect credit cards. So we're removing all the other stuff and leaving his house, 2 cars, and 2 perfect credit cards. His
Mhm.
5, 26, 27, 20. I bet his credit will go up maybe 275 points.
Hmm.
Okay. And we don't care about score. That's like a really uninteresting thing to us, but everyone asks about score. But
Yeah, your whole livelihood for every other people is about score. Yeah.
let's just call it unfundable to fundable. Okay. But
Right.
the reason he becomes fundable is he had 2 perfect credit cards that remain. If he
Mhm.
had walked away from everything, all of that could be removed, but he wouldn't have good credit. He'd have no credit.
Well, sometimes no credit's better than 0 credit, and at no credit, you could. Do you
Rebuild.
have what methods for him to within, I don't know, like 12 months to
Right.
be okay? I'm making
That's
stuff up now. You
no, no,
realize
no.
that, Michael, right?
You did perfect, but
Yes.
instead of 1 month, Troy, getting this guy all the negatives removed and getting him funded, we're
Uh,
talking about, you're right, 12 months, because we got to remove the negative and start building from scratch. So it's
yeah.
a slower process. But
But
he went
1
through
year is a lot shorter than, what is it, 7 years, 9 years? What is it, Tanya?
7 to 12 for it to fall off by itself. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed, you have exercise equipment just like me in my
Because of
place.
COVID.
You see, yeah, you see that. So
Yeah,
I was realizing how similar our color schemes are. It's kind of
yes.
weird.
That's a COVID elliptical bike. Yes. Everyone
Yeah.
sees it's like, oh, let me guess, you bought that during COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah.
So yeah, every scenario is different, but we're going to give them the guidance no matter what. We don't. There's no charge for consults. We just do this all day long. We'll help anyone we can, and if they don't follow it, they don't follow it. It's okay. I mean, we're not forcing them to follow our guidance. But
Yeah.
there is no charge, and we do charge for our services, but only when you receive funding. There's nothing
Oh, okay.
before you receive funding. Then after you receive funding, there's nothing again till the next time you receive funding. So
Oh,
all the
you do
guidance,
all the work up front then.
we do, but
Yeah.
we do it again up front after you've been funded, teaching you and guiding you about the next type of funding that you will qualify for
Are there
going
different
forward.
levels of funding for different purposes, or?
There's different types and levels, both. We work with 15 types of funding. So I'm in the middle of a $4.5 million cash out refi right now for a portfolio of real estate.
Mhm.
But the reason I bring that up is those two brothers who own that company came to me 11 and a half years ago for startup funding. And
Oh,
we did the
they're
business.
clients for life.
Well, that's the point. Business credit
Yeah.
cards we did for them that don't show up on your personal credit,
Yeah.
personal loans. And we did it for them. Then they brought me their wives and their parents, and we funded them all. They pooled their money together, started their company. Now they own a maybe $6.5 million portfolio of real estate, and they're trying to double it now.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
so
I can't
yes,
imagine numbers like that, off the top.
oh,
So if a normal say someone had a normal job and they crash and they get their credit fit, they need to do all that stuff, which is a lot of people, and they're really good at the coaching, and they really want to get started on seeing, how to improve their life and helping other people do certain things or whatever their coaching methods are, because you have business coaches, you have life coaches, you have coaches like me that are business, but on LinkedIn for systems and help people convert and all that for sales. And then you have coaches for sales, and then you have sales teams. So you could even fund those because it's not a coach, but it's more a consultant agency, right? So they're all the same to you, I would imagine, right?
they're pretty much all the same to us. We ask a lot of questions, but we only ask all those questions not because we're deciding what to fund them. Our job is to get them as much bank funding as we can. But
Yeah.
sometimes when we're asking these questions, if you're furnishing an office, we might be able to get you a furniture loan. If
Yeah.
you're starting a computer
Oh,
if you're doing a computer company, and you're going to spend $30,000 on computer equipment, we'd rather get you a equipment loan for the computer stuff so the cash funding doesn't get sucked up with computers. Okay, so we're
okay.
asking these
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
If
Makes sense.
it, I've done a lot of plumbers. A plumber that's working for a plumbing company is going to need funding. Then he's going to do what? He's going to need to quit his job, bring at least one more person on, so there's two people in the van, buy a used plumbing van, some equipment. 6 months later, he needs a second van, a second crew, some more money
Yeah,
for
and then
advertising.
when you get off your job and start your consulting or coaching business or whatever that solopreneur type of system is, or even entrepreneur, but
Mhm.
you have a gap. So you have a major lull because you could have a bad month. You are just starting out. You have to get equipment. You have to travel. All those sort of things. You have a gap of money there. A gap, no, a need. You have a gap that needs money. See, that's a
Yes,
better way of saying it.
but that's the problem. A lot of people try and start businesses with not enough capital. And even if
Yeah,
their idea could work, I don't want to see anyone run out of money before we find out if this business is going to work or not.
got
So
it.
it
Yeah.
may take 6 months for you to catch on as a plumber, because in your neighborhood, everyone knows some other plumber and you're the
Mhm.
new guy. Okay. But in almost every business, if someone says we need $100,000, our goal is really to get them $200,000. I mean, it's always going to
Yeah.
cost them more than they think, and we don't want them to be tight. That's really something we
Yeah, it's really
stress.
hard to calculate how much you spend when the cost of things change too.
Sure. Well,
I
we
went to
in the
lunch.
last year we know that.
Oh yeah, I went to lunch and I said, "Oh, I want to get a Philly cheesesteak sub with some fried rice." Right? I don't
Hmm.
do French fries, right? So I said fried rice, right? And I said, oh yeah, it'll be like $8, $9. It's $15. You go
Yeah.
to it's $15 for like $15 for that, like just the sandwich and the right. And so if you go to, I remember no, maybe it might have been 5 years ago, so I have to. But Subway had a $5 combo. That same combo is $12 now, I
Oh,
think.
come
So
on.
the
Really?
same the same $5 combo is now 12, like 11 and change.
Oh my God.
And
I remember
you got a
that
sub, a
combo.
drink, and a cookie or chips or whatever. And
I
so
remember.
everything is more expensive. Car loans
Mhm.
are so people are scrambling because they're not thinking like that. They're thinking that this costs so much and it's not going to be a big deal, and everything is rising. So they probably will need a little more money than they typically believe they need.
Yeah. I, I will push people to take as much as I can, because it's not just because we get paid based on how much we raise for someone. I just don't want to see anyone run out of money. That's all. Because if you run out of money, your business is basically over.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. If say I needed I don't know, round number. Say I needed $100,000, and you gave me 200,000 to your scenario, right? But you only have to pay back the. How does that work? Like if do you have a chunk and then a portion of it you use,
Great
or is
question.
it fixed payments, or?
Okay. Again, this is all part of the education, and we have 15 different types of funding, but that's confusing. Let me make it much more simple for you. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's
I'm a simple guy.
Okay. Well, let's call it 3 types. One is equipment financing. So we'll put that to the side. Okay. So forgetting about equipment financing, you're left with 2 basic types of funding. One is a line of credit, and one is a loan. A loan means you receive all the money. Okay. But now you're paying every month on that amount of money. Okay.
Right.
One is a line of credit. I'll give you an example that everyone knows about. Okay. A credit card. A credit card. Let's say you have a $10,000 credit card. That's a line of credit. If you don't owe anything on your credit card at the end of that month, you have no bill. Right? If you use $1,000 of that money, and at the end of that month you don't pay them the $1,000, then you only owe them a minimum payment. Let's call it $20 or $15, whatever your bank charges.
Right.
If you borrow $5,000 from that credit card, and again you don't pay it at the end of the month, you're paying on what is outstanding that month, just that period of time.
Got it. So you have these different solutions depending on what makes sense for that business and that individual.
When it comes to a startup business, Troy, we often do a little bit of both. Okay, because we know. Let's go back to the plumber. Okay, we know he could buy a used van for not very much money, but he might want to buy new equipment. So it might be $15,000 worth of equipment he needs to put in there. Okay. So if he gets $50,000 in the form of a loan, then he's paying on the $50,000, but he's going to use 30 right away. So he's not stretching. Okay. But if we get him $50,000 worth of business credit cards, we love business credit cards. Those are the ones that do not show up on your personal credit. It's invisible. So you can't find them on your credit report. So it doesn't stop us from getting you more funding later. Okay. So a $50,000 business loan is cash in the bank. $50,000 worth of business credit cards means if you need the money, it's sitting there waiting for you, but you're not paying for it. So you use it. Okay. So these are the basic 2 types that I want people to understand.
No, that makes sense. For the audience, if anyone, I see on my live, I have people watching because I'm on my LinkedIn little thing here. I'm watching that. So if anyone has questions, feel free. I will say after this on my channel, I'll go ahead and add Michael Praver's booking link. and I got it off your website, so hopefully it's the right one, and they can go ahead and grab some time with you. So the three main sections, questions that we had was identify funding needs and use for it. I think we kind of went over that a bit, right? We said, typically people need stuff for equipment, they need stuff for personnel, they need stuff for travel and things like that. And you said you have 15 different lines that you can help support depending on what they're going to use it for. And you said that also
types of funding. Yeah.
Yes. And you also use different types of funding. A typical, say, client of yours will have more than one type of funding or multiple versions of those types, right?
Oh, yes. Sometimes people have 2 or 3 or 4, but we can sometimes do 2 or 3 or 4 literally at the same time.
Interesting. So what are some obstacles? I think we mentioned that is that making sure credit is done properly. Thank you, Michael, for sending that to me. I can't send a chat on here because
No,
it
that's
won't
okay. I
go
just
to LinkedIn. I
wanted
have
you
to
to have
go
my
to
link.
LinkedIn to do it, but I will
That's
do
just
it
a
right
link.
after this. Yeah.
Okay.
I also have your link on here too. So for everyone who is interested in speaking to them, if you go to this URL right here, you can take a screen capture of it, and I'm sure this is the same link that he just gave me.
No, it's actually different.
Oh my goodness. Well, then don't use this link. I got this off your website.
That's okay. It's okay. They'll both work. That one will take you to one that gives you a 15, 30 or hour call. The one I just sent you is the one we normally use. It's just a 30-minute call. And there's no limit. If someone wants to do 2 consults or 3 in a week, it doesn't matter. There's no fee up front. So if we need more time, someone could, we constantly are having people reschedule for the next day for an additional call.
That makes sense. I had a call right before this meeting, and she was interested in what I have going on and how to help her. And I said, yeah, this is not a really 15-minute conversation. So
Yeah.
You probably want to book an hour for that, and then my partner, she was telling me, I said, we need to change the hour booking meeting to a different name, something like not deep dive. What did she say? More of a discovery type of situation,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we talk about addressing funding obstacles. One of the things you mentioned was credit, personal credit and stuff like that.
That's the biggest.
What other obstacles would people run across?
Well, credit is not one thing; it's many things. But I'll give you some ways we get around it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we could do, of course, is work on the credit itself, and we do that for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why when I first start a conversation, I try and find out if the person I'm talking to is the only borrower, or if there's friends, family members, and business partners.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't always just work when you're starting a company, but some of the clients I work with, we get into sort of a groove. So I'll give you an example. We might have a husband and wife or 2 partners. One needs to pay down their credit, and one is ready for funding. So we take the one who's ready for funding, let's say in January, we get them funded. They take some of the money that we help them with, whatever the form is. We take some of that money and pay down the credit of the partner. So in February, we can get the partner funded. Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're moving loaned money from one end to pay something else in order for them to qualify for additional funding.
Okay. We do it all the time. But let's jump forward. Okay. Let's move forward 6 or 12 months. Okay. Mm-hmm. Again, in January, let's assume the 2 people, their behavior didn't change. One person's ready for funding and one person's not quite ready for funding because their balances are too high. In the next January, we're going to fund that person again who's ready for funding even if it's the other person, doesn't matter, whoever's ready for funding, and then
Mm.
they'll help the other person. So again, there's one in
Mm.
January and one in February. One in January, one in February.
So if you have a strategy partner versus a partner that is on the books for your particular company, do you suggest them to create a company together before you do that, or?
It's not required. You mean if they're just two people helping each other? If you and I
Well,
were
say for example, I have a partnership with someone. I'm using me for example, right? Well, I don't
sure,
need it, but
that's
for
okay.
the sake of the conversation here, I have a partner, and she does sales, and I do the technical stuff, whatever, right? And we're splitting it, but we have our own companies,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
so would you say, you two need to form one company so we can fund it this way, or it
It's
doesn't?
not it's not required at all. There are
Hmm.
lots and lots and lots of benefits to having a company, and that's a whole nother topic.
Mhm.
But or to having two companies or three companies, because the more companies you have, it's like the more business partners you have.
Opportunities.
Because
Yeah.
I can get
Oh.
like I have a guy who just started funding with us who has 5 companies, and his credit wasn't ready for funding. So
Mhm.
we're using the wife and the 5 companies. And next month he'll be ready for funding. We're going to use him and the 5 companies. Okay.
Mm.
So, but that's a
So
different
you're just
topic.
aware of like what the possibilities are depending on the situation. And
That's
this
correct. That's
situation
our job.
here, this may be the best way to go, you
Hmm.
know. And in this
That's our,
situation, you want to work on this while we can fund this other fund you in this way, you know.
mhm.
Okay. Pretty cool. So that really goes in talking about addressing funding obstacles. This should be called creating funding solutions on that line
Yeah.
instead of obstacles. Another thing is so, and you also talk about some of those processes because for addressing credit situations and removing bad things off your credit, you have a partner that has the processes to remove it. However, if you want to build credit, there are things that you will help them or guide them to do
Mhm.
in order for them to get prepared to start building credit. So a lot of people's choice are if they got some things happen on their credit for whatever reason, they would typically have to wait 7 to 14 years. Was it you mentioned?
It, I think it's 7 to 10 or 7 to 12, but
Oh, okay.
it,
But the
it's
point
not
is, you can
it's
wait 1 year, or you can wait. At the worst case scenario, you can wait 1 year and start building that up, or you can wait a lot of years.
it's not even 1 year. Often, if they go through the deletion process, they might be clear in a month, but
Mm-hmm.
then we're not going to get them a ton of money. We might get them $10,000 or $15,000 worth of personal credit cards, and
Mm-hmm.
then in 6 or 12 months, maybe boost that up to 40 or fifty
Well,
thousand.
oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
that's not the point. The point is we want to raise their personal to the point that they can move over to business credit, because
Oh,
the
so that actually answers my questions to some of these processes you're trying to do. So you're trying to say if you need to start on the personal, you can, but the real money is really on the business end.
always, because business
Mhm.
loans go up to hundreds of millions of dollars. Personal doesn't.
Mhm.
But
Well, getting a credit card for 10, 15, 20, whatever, 50,000, sometimes that's all people need. They may be produced, no,
it's
to
what they
start
need
out with, to
today.
start
Yes,
out with.
to start out with.
To
Right.
start out with. But because you got to think, okay, I started this business. Even I had to release a lot of clients because I felt they weren't the right client. So my type of client is I want someone that's going to network and provide value.
Hmm.
But a lot of clients, they just want to sell. They don't care about anything else.
Hmm.
They don't really want to help you. They don't even know if your product works. And then I also have the type of client I'd stay away from, or prospect, because it wouldn't be a client. I try to stay away from because they won't do anything. They won't even take the meetings sometimes. So how are you going to sell if you're not taking the meetings? So
Sure.
I have a very narrow band of people. Like I'm ready to go. I will spend that extra 30 minutes a day to do what I have to do to convert, and I will have these meetings to make it happen. But if someone had 15 or 50,000 or whatever, that might be enough to give them a mental buffer. And that may give them enough to buy a new computer, to travel to the networking, the things that make them, that will get them over the hump so they can breathe for those 3 to 6 months while these other things are working towards higher levels of credit and that sort of thing.
Agreed, but it's also a lifesaver. If you're going from someone who can't use their credit because they're locked out of the banking world, they can't get business credit. It doesn't matter if their business is successful; they can't access the banking world.
Yeah, you can't operate in cash. That's what you're saying.
No, you can't. You could try, but come on,
it's a very difficult thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're a drug dealer, I guess.
Well, drug dealing has its economy. It helps economy too, but that's outside of our discussion.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I had a woman come to me who needed everything you were just describing. She had small credit, but she had let it collapse. Okay, so she couldn't use credit, the credit world, and she also had. I don't even know what it's called. I've never had one before, but something on her credit that said that she owed money to an apartment building. So she couldn't pass a credit check and she couldn't rent an apartment because it said that she owed money to an apartment building. So no apartment building owner would ever rent to her.
Oh yeah, that happens to a lot of people, believe it or not. I bumped into a couple of people, and some of the information is false. Some information, they report it. They said, okay, you're fine. You don't have to, and they report it anyway. And it will ruin your ability to be mobile, to move around when you need to.
She had gotten I guess I'm not telling, as long as I don't tell her name, she was in LA. She got a job in Chicago. So she had to move to Chicago, somehow qualify for an apartment with a negative apartment thing on her credit, and her credit score was so low no one was going to rent to her anyway.
Oh.
We removed the negatives, including the apartment. We put some authorized users on her credit, which is not going to get you a lot of money, but we were able to get her $16,000 worth of credit. She moved to Chicago for her new job. She qualified for an apartment and got it immediately because there's nothing negative on her credit anymore. And then we started building her. But 15,000 sounds like nothing. But if you have negative, so you're not using your credit, you'll be that way forever. For her, it was a refresh because now she's back in the credit world. She could buy a car. She could do anything she wants to now.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Well, that's awesome. I know I've learned a lot on this, and I think I will be sending you a couple of people.
I can't wait. I'd love to help, and we can't promise we're going to help everybody. We will give them the free consult and give them our best.
I'm thinking in my head, if they can help 20%, then it's gonna reflect a good on them and good on me. So
great. Well, I can't wait to help. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, Troy. Sounds like the conversations you and I have anyway, honestly.
Yeah. I think that the thing is how to identify that they're really interested and don't have the funding. And then you also have the people that even if they had the ability to get funding, they don't want to take the risk of having the risk of moving that money around, but that's part of the entrepreneur life, though. You have to, it's all, you can have a job and get fired.
Yeah.
But you can be an entrepreneur and then, make it crash and start over, because what happens when you get fired off a job, you will get another job, right?
I don't know if it's accelerating, but it feels like we're getting more and more calls from people who have a job, who don't want a job ever again. They want to do their own thing.
Oh, yeah, because people realize their eyes are opening, they're awakening. They're like, oh, I can just not travel 2 hours a day. I mean, isn't that
Yeah.
the average? The average is about an hour each way, right?
Well, look at us. We're both working from home.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I haven't had a job and
Me either.
yeah.
Yeah, but I love working with people who are still employed.
Mhm.
It's wonderful for us because there's no pressure. If they've left their job and they're running out of money and then they're trying to get funding, I'm going to get a call or an email from them every 6 hours.
Oh
If they
yeah. Yeah. So I think a lot of the coaches are making money, but they're not accelerating. That's
that's
what I
okay.
feel. Yeah.
But if
Like
if
the
all
one
of a
reason
sudden,
I got a partner is I don't like dealing with sales, right?
Mhm,
And she's
but
great
you're
at
so good at
that.
it.
Yeah, she's good at it, and
No, you're good at
I'm
it.
more of a personality. Like I'm a LinkedIn influencer, so I'm like I'll show you how to do stuff, and I'll show you how to convert and get that meeting and stuff like that. And some of my clients actually need salespeople because they can't do sales at all.
But
I'm a
that
terrible
costs
sales
money.
guy, and I still close, but what I do works really well. So I don't really, it's not a big thing. It's like what you're doing. You don't have to be a great salesperson. You just have to be a good communicator. And you're saying, yeah, this is where you could be. And to work with me, there's no downside. There's virtually no downside to working with. So what would be the downside of working with you?
There isn't one.
That-
Sometimes people use the free consulting and don't call me for a year or two, and then all of a sudden they call me up and they need funding. Let's go. They're ready to go. I'm like, I don't even know who this is. Who is this
Yeah.
on the
I can't
phone?
remember past 2 weeks ago.
I can't remember what I had for breakfast. Seriously, 2 years, and they remember every word of the conversation, and I'm like, who is this? So, but
It's
I
good
love that.
sometimes you have to plant the seed ahead of time. Yeah. Yeah.
We do it
That
all day
reminds
long.
me, yeah, I'm actually starting a private group called the Now Society. And my partner, we were talking and I was like, man, we get all these freaking meetings and people need help now. And I don't want to do these meetings anymore. I want to reduce these meetings. And it's just, you mean like you want a private thing for now, like a society, like a Now Society? I said, boom, logo done in 15 minutes. Let's get it done. And so we created a private group that will offers specific tutorials on whatever their issue is.
Love it.
So we'll create, and then we'll create the private groups for people to ask. That way, we're not charging them arm and leg, and they can get in there and all that stuff. So I figured out one way to help the people that don't have a budget. If they can't afford $37 for it basically pays for a hosting. I figure if they can't pay for that, then they just go please get a job at that point. But what you're offering for the consulting is probably a no-brainer. And even if they just needed to fix their credit and by first removing all these negative items, there would be a cost because that's a service.
We have to
But
we have to pay that company. So yes, you have to pay
yeah,
us, and we pay that company. It's the least expensive of the three companies that does it for us is $1,300.
yeah,
Um,
that's reasonable.
but if you don't need it, there's no reason to do it. I'm not saying everyone needs it at all. I'm just saying if it's absolutely required,
Mhm.
then it's an option.
Well, if it's the first step to just working with you, it's a good idea.
Yes, but if you could bring in your business partner and get them funded and let them pay for the 1,300,
Wow,
again,
smart.
well, you both know it works. If I help the business partner,
Mhm.
you've both seen someone get funded. You both know it works. So you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that we do what we
And
say,
then you
and
have more than one client. Then
that
you have
too.
the partner, and then you have the originator.
Yeah.
Very good.
It
Awesome.
it's not uncommon though that we get referrals within families or within businesses.
Yeah.
A family member, everyone in the family wants to know, how did you get funded? How did you do that? And they tell everybody. It's great. And
Yeah.
that also hopefully will help the coach too. The coach who introduces us often gets other referrals from this. And that's,
Mhm.
in other words, if the coach introduces us, the coach is a winning coach because the
Yeah.
coach got them the funding. The
Yeah.
coach brought us.
Yeah. Yeah. Success begots success. Success. Yeah.
You
Sorry,
bet.
tongue tied there.
Hey, Troy, thank you so much for this. This was terrific. I love you, love your service. Thank you for everything.
Yep. Thank you very much. I'll let you go. And for anyone else, feel free to drop some information there. And as soon as I drop off, I will go ahead and add that link that you gave me, the Bitly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.